Welcome to Monday, where we navigate fresh perspectives and nothing is off the table. Tonight's guest is from Tāmaki Makaurau, Okilani, originally from the North Shore, but now resides in New Lynn. But also, the man is one of New Zealand's top comedians, a Aotearoa comedian who started his journey back in 2012 and has had an array of nominees. In 2013, was nominated for the Billy T Award. 2015, nominated for the NCCG Award. Also for the Best Breakthrough Award, also the Best Male Award. 2016, he was also nominated for the Fred Award as well. But he's more than just a comedian. The man is, he's a presenter as well. He's been on television. You've seen him on several shows on TV1's The Panel Show, Word Up, TV3's 7 Days, just to name a few. But also the man, he's amazing in terms of he's created his own sitcom. The creator of the sitcom, the founder of the sitcom, and the sitcom is on its second season as well, called Raised by Refugees. Please put your hands together for one of New Zealand's finest comedians, but also our favorite Pakistani and Iranian comedian, Pax Assadi.
Can I clap for myself?
Yes, yeah, man.
Thanks, guys.
Oh man. Brother,
what an introduction, by the way.
Oh man,
can I just say, easily top 3 introductions I've ever had, and I've had a lot of introductions in my career. Yeah, there are a lot of introductions where like people don't do their research, and so they just say things that I did like 13 years ago. Where they're like, he's the runner up in the Raw Comedy Quest, and I'm like, dude, I was like 21 when I did that. That's the only thing they say. He's giving it a go. He's 6 months into his comedy career. I'm like, did you do any research? Yeah, but that was perfect. That was you did like the whole timeline.
Bro, man, I appreciate it, man. Awesome.
It's incredible.
Hey, it's a privilege to have you on, man. It is. It really is.
It's an honor to be on. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you for being here. But I thought just to start the ball rolling, obviously we can start with the comedy and so forth. Everyone knows you as the comedian, Pax. But also, I think what I want to bring up is the second season of Raised by Refugees.
Yeah.
And I know there's an amazing story behind that, and some people might not even know that story. But just in case, for those who've been living under a rock, who have no idea why Raised by Refugees and why you've done the sitcom in this specific way. Can you tell us the story behind your sitcom?
Yeah, it was the brainchild of a desire that I've had for a really long time. So one of my favorite shows growing up was, I don't know if you guys remember this show, but Everybody Hates Chris Rock's show. About him being a 12-year-old going into high school. That was one of my favorite shows. I used to love that. That was like appointment viewing for me. I had to watch that show every week when it was on. And so, becoming a comedian and then developing my skills and then finally getting the opportunity to start pitching television shows to networks. That was kind of the show I wanted to make. Like, that was kind of the only show I wanted to make, was like my version of Everybody Hates Chris, because that was such an influential show for me. But also it was like a really good vehicle, because it, like, when you think of a television show, all a television show is, or all a genre is, like if you think of horror or action or comedy or whatever, all a genre is a capsule for a story, right? It's just a vehicle for a story. And certain genres are a better vehicle for certain stories, right? Like horror is a better vehicle for a story about trauma, for example. That's just one example. There's many examples, right? So I really felt like this genre, the origin story genre, where it focuses on the perspective of a young person, was kind of the perfect vehicle to explore my family's past and my family's journey to New Zealand, or in New Zealand as refugees, as people who are new to this country and trying to find their bearings and figure out who they are and how they want to interact with this society. I felt like it was the right way to tell that story. There could have been others, but for me personally, so yeah, that's how it came about. That's why I tried to execute that show and pitch for that show. Yeah.
Cool. in terms of obviously being Pakistani and Iranian, and the story around mum and dad.
Yeah.
Are we able to go kind of get a little deep on terms of that story, and maybe if you can
Of
share.
course. Yeah. Mum is obviously Pakistani and dad is Iranian. They're in New Zealand because my father is a Baha'i. Lots of people don't know what that is. That's a religion. That's probably one of the newest religions in the world. Like when people think of religion, they think of like 1,500 years, 2,000 years old, 2,500 years old. The Baha'i faith is only like 250 years old. It's a very new religion. And unfortunately, the Baha'i faith was and still is heavily persecuted in Iran. There are many Muslim people in Iran that are very kind to Baha'is, and there are people that have great relationships, and there's, it's not a blanket statement, but there is a extremist government in Iran right now that has chosen Baha'is as a scapegoat and targets Baha'is. And that's been happening since the Islamic Revolution, so 1980, 1979. And so my father is a Baha'i. I'm also a Baha'i. I'm a practicing Baha'i. And that was the reason he escaped Iran. The border to Iran is Pakistan. And that was the easiest way to get out, was to illegally cross the border. He was like 16. And that story in itself is like another podcast. That's like getting in a van with a guy you've never met before who you just give like 30,000 reals to, and he just like guns at 180 kilometers across the desert with no lights on so that no one sees them. But also if someone knows they're trying to cross, they can't catch them because they're going too fast. Getting shot at, camel for 4 days. Can't go, you can only travel at nighttime. You can't travel in the daytime because it's too hot. Just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Like my dad's story of escaping the country is like another movie. It's a movie. Gets to Pakistan, and if you watch season 2, I won't give away too much. There's an episode in season 2 that explores them meeting each other. There's one whole episode that just explores that. But my dad met my mom. She was a nurse in a hospital, and his cousin was sick. And my dad met my mom. She was a nurse, and he was like, "Yo, I'm sick too. I feel a little under the weather. Can I come back?"
Was that his move?
He kept pretending he was sick, and he just kept coming back. Yeah. And
she bought into it.
No, she was like, "I don't know you. Like, you need to leave. I'm going to call security." Many times she was like, "This is bad. Like, you need to go." Especially like my mother comes from a Christian background, so like her whole family is Christian. So she comes from a religious minority as well, so they connected on that. Obviously, my mother's experience as a Christian in Pakistan is not as bad as being a Baha'i in Iran, but that was something they connected on. But still, like, it's 1980s Pakistan is really conservative. So to be this young guy, like, and it's the 80s, so your chest hair is out, and you got like gold chains on, like, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Massive collar, like your collar, like you can glide, if you jump off a building, you can like glide to the ground. That's how big your collar is, It's like a, what did they call it? The paraglide. It's like a paraglider, catches a breeze. But yeah, so like my mom was like, "This is bad. Like this culturally, this is really bad." But he just kept going. Like he just kept showing up, pretending he's sick. He would give cigarettes to the security guards so that they would let him into the hospital from the back door. And then he would just cruise around looking for my mom to be like, "Yo, what's up?" Yeah. And then eventually she let him. Like she was like, "Okay, we can go on a date." And then started to like him. And then, lo and behold, they're married. And then they are able to get asylum to New Zealand, and then 1991 I'm born.
Jeez.
How long? I'm just so persistence is everything. But how long did he do that?
In what sense?
From the time he met her to like he's playing the sick game.
Yeah.
That's a move on itself. Yeah. But then he's Baha'i, she's Christian. Like there's a whole heap of reasons why they shouldn't even be together. Yeah.
So, I mean, even her family was like, "Who is this guy?" Like they thought the Baha'i faith was a made up thing. They thought he was like an Iranian spy, a government spy, and he was pretending, he was creating the Baha'i faith to just be like, no, I'm cool, I'm this weird thing, you don't know what it is, it's all good, I'm chill. So that's what they thought of my dad, that he was some kind of spy creating this fake religion. And he was like, no, it's real. And so it took ages for the family to even just like, not even accept him as a son-in-law, but just to like not think that he's a bad guy, you know? So it was crazy. And I mean, even when they got married, my mother's family wasn't that particularly happy about it. Like even after they got married, they were okay with it. But even after marriage, it took a while. So it was a real coming together of culture. It was a real like two people and two families not having to get used to each other, but having to work to understand each other, you know? It was a coming together of worlds. I think coming to New Zealand really helped with that because they could share in their disdain for Western culture. United. Yeah, they could unite.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
They could unite over their disgust for like bikinis and like, you know, binge drinking and like, you know, all the beautiful cornerstones of Western frivolity. Yeah. But yeah, they came here and they worked hard and, you know, yeah, they made a life for themselves and now they have built their business empire and yeah, they're living large now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And what area of business or domain?
So in the show, my dad just works in appliances. Like he has an appliance store, and I just kept it broad because it's easier when you're writing television. It's easier for things to be broad. But in real life, it was specifically a vacuum cleaner store. Yeah, so he opened a bunch of vacuum cleaner stores. Yeah, he's retired now, so he sold all his stores and he bought his boat and he just like cruises around on his boat fishing. He is a hardcore fisherman. Yeah, outdoors guy. He like hunter, fisher guy. Yeah. And I just want my PlayStation and I want the curtains closed and I want it dark and I don't want it, yeah.
Oh man, you gotta give props to your dad, man. Like just the hustle, man. Just
real hustler.
Hustle, man.
Yeah, real hustler. Like, and me and my dad talk about this now. Like, we're not shy to talk about it because I think we're both adults. And my dad admits, like, you know, he wasn't the best dad in certain ways. Like, you know, emotionally, he wasn't the most available, and in terms of time, he wasn't there a lot. But as an adult, I don't blame him for it, man. Like, I understand. You were here with nothing. You had like $40 cash when you came here. And so you hustled, and I really appreciate my dad for that. And in other ways, he was a great dad because he was a great example of someone who didn't give up. Yeah. You know, he was a great male figure, a great male example of someone who was like, no matter how many setbacks I experience, I'm going to keep trying to achieve what I want to achieve. And so in many ways, that's a great dad, you know? Yeah. So me and my dad, we talk about this nuance, which is cool now. You know, now that we're adults, we talk about it not in black and white, you know, like bad or good. But, you know, it's complicated and there's lots of good and lots of not so good. But yeah, he's a real hustler. Yeah. Yeah.
Jeez. And how much of that is rubbed off on you? Like
he would say not enough. Yeah. When he sees me playing PlayStation, he's like, "You lazy bastard, you lazy." But I attribute a lot of my success in the entertainment industry, and I use the word success with earmarks. Like, I still feel like I have a long way to go, right? I still feel like there's lots more for me to achieve and do. But the success that I have been fortunate enough to experience to this point, I attribute to my dad's example of someone of the work ethic, you know, of understanding that, like, you know, my dad would always tell me that, like, it's fine to be talented, but talented people who don't work hard don't get anywhere. You know, both my parents would say stuff like that. They would always drill that kind of stuff into me, you know, like, if you're going to do something, it doesn't matter what you do, just be the best at that thing that you could possibly be. Like, that kind of rhetoric was always in my house. And my dad drove a lot of that. My mum also drove a lot of that. So yeah, I attribute a lot of what I've achieved to that. And it's not always good. It's not always great because, like, you know, an example of why it's not perfect is I have a real tough time celebrating my wins. I don't know how to celebrate my wins, and I really struggle with that. Like, you know, when I first landed the sitcom, or when I did stand up on television for the first time, or, you know, whatever it may be, like, I really struggle to stop and just like celebrate and be happy and like take a moment to, I almost feel guilty. Like, I almost have that feeling of like, you're wasting time or you're resting on your laurels. Don't do that. What's the next thing? You know, focus. And so, yeah, like it has really helped me in my career, but there's also things ingrained in me that I am actually trying to unlearn. Not completely, but just to find that balance, you know, that balance that brings success, but at the same time, peace and joy in your successes. Yeah.
Like a sense of contentment type thing.
Yeah. Learning to be content, learning to be really proud of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I struggle with being proud of myself. Yeah.
Is it like, because I mean, this is how you roll, right? This is how you have rolled. And is it something that you were raised up with? And is it because mum and dad didn't give you those moments? Yeah. Or did they kind of discourage that and you just thought it was the norm, and as you've gotten older you've seen other people celebrate and you feel the need to celebrate yourself now? Yeah.
I think my parents, like, you know, man, I'm a dad as well. I'm a dad. I have 2 kids, and like parenting is hard, man. Parenting is so hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever tried to do, you know, like, and anyone who thinks that parenting is like, you know, like it's a cakewalk, it's just not. And no matter how ready you think you are, you're in for real rocky road. So, you know, with my parents, like, I have a deep understanding, and it's taken time, but I have a deep understanding of the nuance of how difficult parenting is. But yeah, I do think that, you know, my parents did struggle to say things like, I'm proud of you. They say it now, you know, now that I'm an adult, and I actually really appreciate it. Like, I'm really happy that my parents say things like that now, you know, but when I was younger, it was more like, that's cool, that's good, but what else could you have done? You know, like, that's great that you got a B-, but how do we get to an A? You know, rather than amazing work, you got a B-, you know, like, I'm so proud of you, you know, like that's, and again, not their fault. They were just doing what they knew. They were just, they had the best intentions for me, you know, like, it's not their fault. But yeah, that definitely ingrained a real difficulty to, again, be proud of myself. And that's something I have to unlearn and retrain myself to operate a little bit differently, and maybe be a little bit different to my parents with my kids. And that's okay. Like, something that I've spoken to my dad about, and I want my parents to understand, and all parents out there, even if you're a young parent or if your kids are grown up and gone, you know, like, no matter what stage, it's okay that you made mistakes as a parent. Like, that's all right. You know, like, I don't like this rhetoric of like, oh, I screwed up. Like, you know, there's no going back, or like, you know, really like letting it weigh heavy on you. Yeah, you want to try and nail it. Of course you want to try and nail it. But if you don't nail it, I really believe in this idea that it's all right. As long as you had the best intention, you tried your best, it's okay. You know, like, we make mistakes as parents. It's impossible.
The interesting thing about that is I absolutely agree 100%. And sometimes one part of it is like, you know, the parents doing the best they can with the knowledge they have and, you know, the resource that they have at the time. Then the other side of that is as the child understanding that and coming to that understanding that my parents did do the best and not holding them, you know, for every little thing that you didn't have that, you know, and that's something I just think from my own experience having to come to peace with is like, yeah, we didn't have the best childhood, but man, when I think about it, my parents did such an amazing job. And now as a parent myself, it's like trying to take those really cool positive things, but also doing my part to try and plug any gaps and understand that it's not going to be perfect. Yeah. I am still going to have some gaps that my kids will have, but just being okay with that and keeping that dialogue open with my kids. Yeah.
And I hope that my kids are able to plug the gaps that I had as a parent. You know, like I want them to, like, I know I'm going to make mistakes, and I want them to grow up and go, and that open dialogue is really important. I would love to have a relationship with my daughters when I'm older where they go, you really screwed this up, Dad. And for me to go, yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. And then for them to go, it's okay. You know, like, we get it. We understand. And they're able to plug that, you know, and move on, and hopefully their kids. I really believe in this concept that, like, if you have the best intentions, the way we'll get better as a society is only generation by generation, and not holding the last generation to the sword, you know, and being like, you did this, you ruined us, you know. It's not helpful in any way. Yeah, I shudder to think the mistakes that I'm making as a parent, but it is what it is, you know.
And I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to think like that, and it frees your parents up, but it also frees you, because then you're not trying to blame stuff. Yeah. You know, like, at the end of the day, I kind of believe, like, every day's a new opportunity to start again or do something better. Yes. And if we're just going to be blaming our parents for everything, this is why I'm not doing this and this is why I'm not doing that, like, you're just trapping yourself. So I absolutely love what you're saying there, because you free them. Yeah. You allow them to live the rest of their days gracefully, but you also free yourself. Yeah. And you allow yourself to kind of go, cool, this is where I'm at, this is what I have, and, you know, the sky's the limit.
I parent a lot from the couch. I do most of my parenting from the couch. Just like, you know, that kind of parenting.
No, I don't.
Yeah. I'm a living room parent.
What, is this when the remote's right there?
Yeah.
No.
What's that noise? That's my parenting.
Because how old are they now, Pax?
They're oh man, that's bad, eh? Not around about. I think one's like 24. Not 9 and 7. 9 and 7.
Did they give you a bit of lip?
Oh man, girls, man, they're smart. Girls are so smart. I remember being a boy, and like all I cared about was like Dragon Ball Z cards and like throwing things. You remember throwing things? Do you remember how good throwing things was?
We don't climbing stuff.
Climbing. Why don't we throw things as adults anymore? It's so fun. I remember I was shooting a TV show, and we were shooting. I host a nature documentary comedy series called Endangered Species Aotearoa. It's on TV1. If you want to check it out on TVNZ Plus. We were going into a bush area to find a native endangered bird, and that bush area was protected from like different bacteria that you can bring in. If you're coming in from the city, you can bring that in. So we had to go through a quarantine process where they like spray all our stuff, they spray us and everything, and we had to wait for ages for that quarantine process to be done. So we had to drop our gear off and then just stand there and just wait for them to quarantine it. And me, the camera operator, the director, the producer, two camera operators, director, producer, and me. So 5 guys. We ended up inventing a game called Bucket Rock, where we found a bucket and there was a whole pile of rocks, and we just played who could get the most rocks into the bucket. We played that for 3.5 hours. And the women on the crew were like, these are Neanderthals. What is going on? And we were like, it was like the best day of the shoot. You know?
That's your basketball side, eh?
I think it's my basketball side, but also they're like, as a woman, you're looking at me so confused, but all the men in the room right now are like, that sounds fun, cool, man.
No, actually, what's going through my head is you're absolutely right. I've seen that in a lot of males who can, even like some of those football superstars. Yeah. You see some of their Instagrams and they're just sitting there, grown professional man, legs wide open. All those colourful balls, you know, like, and they're just chucking it into like a thing in front of them, and I'm looking at it like, wow.
And not to make a blanket statement, like there might be women that also enjoy that like a lot, but I think you guys, your bucket rock is like conversation, like having a meaningful conversation. You know?
Is it?
I think so. Maybe. I mean.
Again, not all women.
Yeah,
like I don't want to make blanket statements, but
like when we're emotional, need to let it out.
Yeah.
But I could see how that might be quite therapeutic.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean the bucket
Yeah.
thing.
Thank you so much.
You said 3 hours. So who won the competition then?
There was like within the 3.5 hours there were multiple competitions. So we had one where it was like distances, and then one where we put 3 buckets, and the first bucket that was closest was like 2 points, the middle bucket was like 8 points, and then the furthest bucket was like 14 points, and like we had more. It was awesome, man.
That sounds pretty cool.
I still think it was like the top 3 best days of my life.
But was that how long you guys had to wait?
Ages, yeah. It was
okay.
incredible. It was crazy. The quarantine was so thorough, yeah.
Brother, okay, man.
Yeah.
Well, then that makes sense. That
Yeah.
absolutely justifies that.
Yeah.
Just let the time go by.
Because
Eh?
what
Yeah.
would you have been doing if you weren't doing that?
If we didn't discover bucket rock, I don't know, probably throwing stuff at the women on the crew. Just throwing like
Woman rock.
throwing sticks at them or something.
No, I support you.
Yeah.
Bucket
Stop
rock.
talking.
Bucket rock.
Why are you talking?
I support your bucket rock 100%.
Give us attention. We're
Give
all
us
just
something to aim for.
yeah. But going back to my daughters, like they, it was me, my dad, and my brother, and then my cousin who grew up with us pretty much, and then my uncle, my cousin's dad, and it was just a very boy-heavy upbringing, and my mum had to like kind of become a boy. She's still, very empathetic and very like the traditional traits of a mother, but then was also a chameleon in that she could like be one of the boys, which was awesome. It was so like cool of my mother to do that, to like make us feel comfortable, and like it was really cool. But yeah, that means that like now that I'm the minority, like it's 3 girls or 3 women and 1 boy. Yeah, it's a real learning curve for me. It's a real
the other way around.
Yeah, it's the other way around. It's the complete other way around. So it's a real roller coaster for me, and in a really good way. Like learning to be more vulnerable, learning to be more willing to admit that you're wrong. But I mean, it sounds funny, but like it's true. Like men, sometimes we have an issue with admitting that, saying sorry, and it sounds so simple, but I think I've really discovered that in myself, that I really have an issue saying sorry when it's that simple. All you have to do is just be vulnerable, apologize. Even, my wife says like something happens and one of my daughters gets really upset to the point where I'm like, this is great. Like, why are you this upset? And I'm like, I didn't even do anything. Like, I didn't. And she's like, I know you didn't do anything, but that's not the point. All she wants is for you to be emotionally available. That's it. She just wants you to be emotionally available. And then it'll go away. And that's something that I've had to learn. It's really hard, but like, that's something I've had to click into and go, let go of yourself. Take yourself and put it aside and just open up and be emotionally available. And she's right. 9 times out of 10, it goes away and they're happy. Dad just gave me a cuddle and said, I'm sorry. And we're good, And like, so these things are like, again, I don't want to make blanket statements and say it's exclusive to men and it's exclusive to women. But that was my environment growing up, and now I'm in a new environment where it's not just so boyish. And yeah, I've had to learn a lot, which is good. I'm at first it was hard, but now it's really positive. Yeah.
Because you can see the benefits.
Yeah, because I can see the benefits. Yeah, because it
cool.
actually impacts the way I interact with the world now. It impacts the way I interact with not just people in my immediate family, but like just people in general in my workspace. When I play social sports, whatever it is, like it's just so much easier to just, like something happens on the basketball court and you're just like, sorry, bro, that's my bad. Like before I'd be like, get out of my way, like whatever, that testosterone, that elevation of like, I'm the alpha on the court. And like that kind of stuff is like gone away now. I don't know what it is. It's probably a mix of like being a dad and the empathy just naturally coming out, as well as me learning to be more empathetic in a household of like not so much boys anymore, you know, like all of that now is impacting the way I interact with the world. And it's also allowed me to let go of this idea that a lack of empathy means weakness. Or no, that an abundance of empathy means weakness. It's allowed me to let go of that idea. It's actually, it's strength.
Yeah.
You know? To be empathetic is emotional strength, and to not be empathetic is hiding. You're hiding. You know? And sometimes that's scary to face. To realize that that's what you're doing is scary to face it, because you're like, oh, is that what I'm doing? I'm running away. I'm not tough. I'm actually running away from the issue. I'm scared. You know, and you feel like when it first started facing that kind of stuff, I felt like a little boy. You know, like I was a 27-year-old man, but I felt like a 10-year-old because I realized, oh my God, I'm scared of this stuff.
Is it because you saw little of it being expressed? Only because you're right. There's such a common societal message around men, you know, not expressing feelings. But we also know that comes from a lot of this societal messages. And then what you've just shared is actually it feels good when you do, as opposed to actually we shouldn't.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about too. Is like, why is it naturally so hard? And I say I'm probably generalizing too, but why is it naturally so hard for us to just be okay with being in the wrong, being sorry,
being vulnerable? Yeah.
Having emotions and expressing it.
I think it's a mix of things. I think like people naturally, you know, sometimes I see people interact with, and again, like these things are changing, which is really awesome. You know, I think as a society we're advancing. You know, there's a lot of things we're really doom and gloom about our society, and in many ways, fair enough. You know, like there is a little element of like, man, society's like crumbling around us, and that's kind of fair enough. But then in other ways, like I feel like as a collective, we don't give our society props sometimes for advancing, because sometimes I look at the way we are as a humanity and I'm really like, oh, that's awesome. You know, like the way we treat our younger boys now is not so. I think we were unfortunate. You know, there's good and bad in terms of the way we grew up, but we were a little bit unfortunate to grow up in a time where you know, when you would watch people interact with girls, they would interact with girls slightly differently to the way they would interact with boys. A lot more, you know, a lot more caring, a lot more empathetic, a lot more maybe they were willing to show, you know, physical love, like hugging and stuff like that. And then boys, it was a little tougher, you know, like a little more. That's the kind of era we grew up in. And so we're just products of that, you know. And and again, it's not our parents' fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's just the way, it's just what they knew. And so now we have to, it's kind of our job to like unlearn it and kind of relearn a way that is healthier to operate and deal with. I guess you could call it an epidemic, you know, an epidemic of loneliness or an epidemic of men feeling disconnected. And it's because we've been told that like connecting emotionally is weak.
Yeah.
You know, be a tough guy. Get on that field, get on that court, smash the opponent, drink beers. I don't drink. I never have drunk alcohol before, but, you know, drink beers, you know, like do whatever, you know, go to work, make money, come home, sleep, wake up, do the same thing. And again, that's changing, that's evolving. You know, I'm so thankful to see our society advancing in those ways. Still a little bit of it. There's still a bit of it there. Like it hasn't gone away completely. But, you know, we're a product of it. And I think that it's a mix of things that has caused that. But that's kind of, the journey.
Yeah, interesting. And you're absolutely right, Pax, in terms of men in general, more so in Aotearoa New Zealand, how the culture is pretty, be tough, be staunch, you know, don't show your emotions, and don't be vulnerable. And obviously there's been a major shift in terms of, hey, let's just talk, let's have a conversation. And hence why you're here, and we want you here because, you know, obviously we're here. You can talk about some of the issues that you've gone through, some of the hardships, and even a lot of your successes. And so, in terms of having your two girls and obviously your lovely wife, what's been the greatest learning thus far as a father, in terms of you nurturing and raising up these beautiful girls of yours?
What is the biggest lesson? I think the biggest lesson so far has been I think the biggest lesson so far has been to prioritize my kids. And that sounds obvious. I think that sounds obvious, but I think we all underestimate how demanding of a world we live in and how distracting the world we live in is. Now with social media, I think it's like been times by 100. But I think the thing that my kids just want the most from me, and the thing that I have to like give them, is my time and real time, like unfettered, undisturbed time, attention, real interest in who they are and what they believe in and what they want to be and where they're going and what game do they want to play and why do they want to play and what do they enjoy about it. Like, I think sometimes we underestimate the power of that, and sometimes we think that like a little bit of time that is not super intimate, and when I say intimate, I mean just like connected, is good enough. Because now I got to work. I got this report I got to write. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I'm like, I'm a product of my father. God bless my father. He's the hustler from way back, and so I have that in me. So like, I want to just like be in my office writing a script. Like once I got a script idea, like I want to just be doing that because the idea's going and I need to get it out, and my kids are like, let's play Monopoly. And the first jerk reaction is like, I don't have time to play. I don't want to play Monopoly. Like I'm trying to make like real money. Like I don't.
That's a 6-hour commitment.
Yeah. That's a 6-hour commitment. I know the little one is going to steal money from me. Like I don't trust her. But the biggest lesson is like prioritizing them, and it's not just Monopoly. It's like even, when they come home from school, and I'm like maybe doing the dishes or I'm in my office working. Just take like 15 minutes to go, hey, what did you do at school today? What was the coolest thing and what was the worst thing that happened at school today? I never ask, how was school? Because I remember hating that question as a kid. Because your parents go, how was school? And you go, yes, cool. It's school. What do you want from me? But I ask, name the coolest thing you did at school and the worst thing that happened at school. And sometimes I throw in, name one thing you learned. And I always ask the little one, what did you steal today? And she'll always pull out like a pen out of her pocket and be like, sorry. I'm like, I'm not playing Monopoly with you. Yeah, I think that's the thing that I've learned the most.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it sounds like I'm saying that because that's not what my parents gave to me. And in a way it is. But again, it's like, like it's okay. In fact, in some way, you can spin things. You can look at things differently. In a way, it's a blessing that my parents made that mistake so that I am acutely aware of it. If it wasn't something that affected me, maybe I wouldn't be aware of it. And I would just go through life kind of similar. Just kind of not giving my kids real attention, letting time pass us by. And again, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying like every single day, every single week, I'm nailing it. There are many weeks, there are many days where it slips. I make mistakes. I get caught up in things that aren't as important as my children. I'm not perfect, but I really liked what you said about, each day is a chance to be better and advance and grow from the day before.
It's cool, man. This is cool. What awesome. Good answer, man. It's obviously because you're in telly, you're on stage, on comedy.
Yeah.
How are your daughters in terms of how they feel about their dad being on the screen?
Oh, they think dad's dry balls, man. They think dad isn't funny at all.
Seriously?
Yeah. Like whenever like I'm being funny around other people, I can just see them being like, oh, like. You know, like they.
What about your wife?
Oh, my wife. Oh man. Let's not get into that. Let's not get into that. My wife doesn't. I think my wife's just used to me. I think, first 4 years, 5 years of marriage, I'm crushing, like I'm killing this gig, But now she's like, it's just my husband. It is what it is, But yeah, I think my wife's obviously very proud. And my kids, I think my kids just get excited that other people know who I am. It's less about dad. Like, they don't think dad's that funny. They don't think dad's like, they're just like, that's my dad, But when other people are like, whoa, Pax Assadi, they're like, does that person know who you are? And I can see them get excited. So yeah, it's when other people give me recognition is when they get pumped about it. Yeah.
That's how it goes, man. It's so funny. I guess we can go back. I don't know. Maybe we can segue into the comedy.
Yeah.
Obviously. And so comedy. Why? What made you kind of fall in love with comedy, and why stand-up comedy?
Why, man? It's the big question. Why? Sometimes I wish I just had a job. High school. It was high school. Intermediate was the beginnings of it. And then high school was like, because we moved to Hamilton. And so I was I stuck out like a sore thumb in Hamilton. Like, there were no Iranian Pakistanis in Hamilton, there's none. I don't even think there was there's barely any Middle Eastern kids in general, So I went to high school and obviously it's not that far removed from 9/11, Al-Qaeda is still a thing. ISIS is like, the rumblings of that kind of movement is happening. ISIS became a thing way later, but like that rhetoric was still in the air, And so, yeah, I'm like the butt of the joke and not really connecting and stuff. And so I think there's like in high's so ruthless. I think there's like 3 or 4 ways to get by, right? One way is to be physically attractive, like to be handsome or just like hot, whatever, like whatever you do, whoever you are, if you're just hot, then you don't have to do anything else. You can just kind of be hot and walk around hot, and that's fine. And then I think the other way is to just retreat, like back out and be a social recluse. I think that's another way. Another way is to be tough and to kind of move into the bully space, and then the fourth way, the fifth way is sports. Be good at sports. So even if you're like uggos, but you're like mean at rugby, like everyone gives you a pass, You automatically become hot somehow, Yeah, even though we all agree that you're not hot, you somehow become hot. And then the fifth way is the way that I managed to traverse the social hierarchy is be funny. And that's where it began. And I learned that the way to stop being the butt of the joke is to get to the punchline first. If you get to the punchline first, you are in control of the joke. You get the laugh, and also you seem very self-aware. And self-aware people are people that other people usually respect because they go, this person is comfortable in their skin, so they're able to get to the punchline first. And that's the character that I played in high school. Let's be honest, we're all playing characters in high school, right? And so that's the character I played. And then as I got older, the character started to become the person because I started to become really comfortable with being funny. It started to no longer be a defense mechanism or a survival tool, but rather just a comfortable way to operate. It's how, I enjoy making people laugh and being funny. And then I saw stand-up for the first time. Do you guys remember Russell Peters?
Yeah.
So Russell Peters was kind of like the first comic to explode on YouTube. No one else was like big on YouTube. Everyone else there was like a few comics with clips on YouTube, but like they had like 5,000 views at most. And Russell Peters was the first one that like popped and had like millions of views. He went from selling out like 200-seat theaters in Canada. He got on a plane. His videos on YouTube exploded. He landed And the booker was like, we need to rebook your show and make it an 8,000 seat theater because the amount of people that are calling is ridiculous. Like overnight, he was like the biggest comic in the world. And so in being South Asian, he's Indian, I'm Pakistani, we're from the same region, you know, half South Asian. He's Canadian, South Asian. So someone who kind of looks like me as well was really big, I could, you know, and didn't look like me and do the accent. Like he didn't look like me, but was like a bumbling like version of Apu from The Simpsons, you know? He spoke eloquently with a Canadian accent and was kind of cool and like, you know, was in command of the room. So I just became addicted to Russell Peters videos. Like I couldn't stop watching them. And then from there it expanded out to other comics, Chris Rock, Chappelle, Ellen. I became obsessed with 80s Ellen comedy specials. I just loved Ellen in the 80s, her HBO specials. I would just watch those over and over and over. I somehow got like 3 of them and I just watched them on repeat like every day. And yeah, then at 18, I decided I was going to be a stand-up. I didn't tell anyone, but in my head I was like, I'm going to be a stand-up. And then at 19, I went to the Classic Comedy Club on Queen Street and did my first gig. I entered the Raw Comedy Quest. And the owner of the comedy club, like to enter the Raw Comedy Quest, you had to have done 1 gig already to enter. And so when I went to the owner of the comedy club, I was like, I want to enter the Raw Comedy Quest. And he's like, have you done a gig before? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, where? And I was like, O'Malley's. And he was like, where's that? And I was like, just, you know, around the, you know, you just go down Queen Street, take a right, take a left. Yeah, just some, I had no idea what I was talking about. And he knew I was just like making it up. But he just let me on. He didn't say anything. He didn't call me out. He was just like, all right, yep, you can do the Raw Comedy Quest. And that was it. And I got to the final of the Raw Comedy Quest. Yeah. And didn't look back. That was that.
Oh.
Yeah.
When you were watching Ellen and Russell Peters, were you watching it initially because you enjoyed it, or were you watching it to learn?
I was watching it because I was amazed. I was watching it because they were doing what I do at lunchtime, obviously at a much higher level and a much more skilled level, but they were doing what I did at lunchtime in front of people for money. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, what is going on? It was less like, I wasn't enjoying myself in the traditional way you enjoy stand-up. And I didn't understand stand-up yet to be able to study it. So like to be able to study something, you have to understand it on a base level, right? And I didn't. So I was just watching it from like the perspective of like shock and awe. And that advanced obviously and grew. And then I started doing stand-up. And so now, 13 years in, I watch stand-up from a analytical perspective. Yeah, I don't laugh I never laugh now when I watch stand-up. If I think something is funny, in my mind I just go, oh, that was good. You know, like that perspective, because you're understanding the setup, you're understanding the wordplay, you're understanding the word economy. You see how they took the audience there. You know, and so that my brain just goes, nice. You know, like I don't laugh anymore, which is a bit sad in a way, but.
When do you get to laugh?
When do I get to laugh? When I tell my kids to not do something and they do it anyway and they get hurt.
Don't touch the element.
Yeah. That's the only time. That's also how I know God exists.
That's so cool. Who do you think is the GOAT?
Oh, that's too hard of a question.
Because they always talk about it.
It's not a valid question. It's too hard.
Who's your favorite?
Or who are your top 4 or 5?
Okay,
Because you always hear those comedians when they go on Joe Rogan's show, or they're doing this.
Anyone who says anyone is the GOAT is wrong, because comedy is too subjective. It's too subjective. This is not sports. There is some parallels to stand up in sports, but this is an art. Like what a certain community finds funny is completely different to what another community finds funny. It's like to some people, Tofinga's the GOAT, you know, and they have a valid case. Like I've never seen Tofinga not walk into a room and crush, like annihilate. And so if you say Tofinga's the GOAT, fair enough. You know, but like no one in the States are going to say, or maybe some, you know, people in Utah might, you know, some Tongans in Utah might say that. But you know, the majority of the global population is not going to say that, but I wouldn't say that their opinion is not valid. That's the nature of comedy to me. It's so subjective, you know, like you can't, but you can have if it can be personal. So like for me, like I'll answer the question. For me, it would be Dylan Moran, Irish comedian. If you haven't watched him, go watch him. He's hectic. He's chaotic. Sometimes it's hard to like follow what he's even talking about, but it's incredible. Ellen, obviously, modern Ellen is not the stand-up of old. She's, you know, commercialized multi-millionaire Ellen, and that's cool. You know, get your money, girl. Like, live your life. But old school 80s HBO Ellen is like incredible to me.
Was that before she came out? Is that era?
I think there's a couple of HBO specials that I love that she had come out. So there's a couple that she hadn't come out yet, and then there was a couple. There's like kind of straddling both sides.
Okay.
I love Ray Romano. Everybody loves Ray Romano. Wow. Everyone knows him as everybody loves Raymond. But as a stand-up, he's a crusher. He's incredible as a stand-up. He's so funny. And he has a recent Netflix special that came out maybe 4 years ago, and it's so good. It's so good. And my fourth would be probably a comedian called Omid Jalili, who now I'm very fortunate that he's a friend now. But he's a Baha'i Persian comedian from the UK who I loved as like a 14, 15, 16-year-old because he was a Baha'i Persian comedian. I couldn't believe it. And he had done Live at the Apollo. He had performed for the Queen. He had his own BBC One sketch show, 2 seasons of a sketch show on BBC One. He had done specials. He'd done it all in the UK. And so I was just like, I can't believe someone who is a Baha'i Persian comedian is killing it in the UK. And so I would watch countless hours of Omid Jalili. And now I'm just, like I said, so lucky that I get to call him my friend now, which is crazy.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But when was the light bulb moment when you just knew, like you said, hey, this is what I want to do? So when was that moment like, man, I'm going to do this for as long as I can?
It was while I was watching an Omid Jalili video. And it wasn't like I had discovered him for the first time and thought, I'm going to do it. I'd watched heaps of his videos before, but as I was watching it, I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm going to do this. Like, it's not like a fascinating story. It's not like an incredible story. It's just simple as that. Like, I was just sitting in, you know how back in the day, our families had computer rooms? Like, I was sitting in the computer room on the family computer watching Omid Jalili videos, and I just thought to myself, oh, I'm going to do this. Like, it's not like this crazy story. I just thought it and followed through. That's all it was. Yeah.
Just inspired.
Yeah.
Would you say? Inspired?
Yeah, in a way. I think subconsciously I always wanted to do it, and then I think there was a moment where my brain just went like, well, then why not? Just do it then, you know? And I just committed to that thought. I just grabbed onto that thought and committed to it. Yeah.
And it's so cool because I can imagine going from being in high school, watching these videos, seeing someone like Russell Peters, for example, and then sort of thinking, wow, he makes money off that.
Yeah.
It could be a job.
Yeah.
And then going, I could do that. And most people, you know, who are of minority groups, can I say that? And we kind of look around and we go, well, who else is doing this here in my community? Like, can I really do this? And then you have to map this out yourself. Like, you don't have anyone to kind of ring up and go, hey, how did you get into the, how do you actually make this come to life? And I find that so fascinating. I hear your parents' story, them coming to New Zealand, and then, you know, decades later hearing that they've built themselves a business empire. Again, they came here with no map, nobody, and they had to figure this all out. I can see the parallels here. But again, like, how do you go from being in high school, being in the family computer, going, I'm going to do this? What were those steps that got you to the you know, to actually standing up in front of people? Like, I think that's fascinating. That whole jump from dreaming it, thinking it, and then
Then action,
I'm gonna go do it
action
now.
and do it, yeah.
On your own.
I remember when I was like 18, because I did my first gig when I was 19 going on 20. I remember when I was like 17, 18, and I was like researching how do you become a stand-up. Like I was Googling how do you become a stand-up. And then I would Google how do you become a stand-up in New Zealand. And then it would just, that rabbit hole of Googling led me to the website of the Comedy Club in Auckland on Queen Street, the Classic. And there was a page on the Comedy Club that said, would you like to try stand-up? And there was a number and it said, call this number. And I remember that entire process unfolding, kind of feeling like an out-of-body experience. Because doing that and actually following through with becoming a stand-up comedian is kind of crazy. And even crazier when you're 17, 18 years old. Everybody else is thinking about either taking a gap year or going to uni. Everybody else is thinking that. And I'm Googling how do you become a stand-up comedian. It's absurd, right? So I do remember like feeling like I wasn't actually in control of my thoughts. Like I wasn't actually in control of my body. I was just kind of going like on almost like when an athlete is exhausted and they're just kind of running on fumes. Like they're just kind of running on like desire and passion. That's kind of how I felt. Probably not exactly the same, but in that realm of like, I'm not making logical decisions here. Like I'm not doing anything that's good for me, really. I'm taking this hard road that is like grueling and unforgiving. But I don't know, I just kind of, the ball started rolling and I just couldn't stop myself. I just had this out of body experience where I kept going. I called the guy. He said, how old are you? I said, I'm 22. he said, okay. Like, come on, Raw Comedy Quest, have you done a gig before? I said yes. Like all of these things, like I'm making decisions that normally I never would have made. I was like quite a reserved kid. I was a good kid. I didn't get in trouble. The only reason I got in trouble was I was just trying to be funny in class. Otherwise, I was a really good kid, like all the teachers really loved me. I was kind, I was courteous. I didn't do these kinds of things. And then all of a sudden, it just kind of happened and it just went and then I ended up, I was 19 going on 20 and I was standing on stage at the Classic Comedy Club.
And how was your first gig? Like, how was it?
I killed.
Yeah.
I killed. My first gig, I killed.
Talk about that moment when you're just about to step on.
Yeah.
It's just gone from you planning, ringing,
Yeah.
You've lied to the guy.
Yeah.
And now you got to show
Scott,
up.
the owner of the Comedy Club, Scott.
Now you got to show up.
Scott is like my white dad. Honestly, I've been around Scott so much. He's my white daddy. Like, I love that guy, but I apologize for lying to you.
So you get up, talk us through that, because I think this is really important for people to hear. That it's fascinating. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
For you to be all of that, 17, 18 at school, watching these videos and then not even being logical, just pure falling in love with something.
Yeah.
And this is that passion, that absolute love for something, and then just rolling it without thinking. Kind of thinking, but just going off the fumes of I love this stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely the fumes of infatuation with thing. Yeah, with a career path. Yeah. What was your question? What was it like walking on stage for the first time?
First experience.
Oh.
So this is when it's about to happen. From the moment you get up there to the moment you finish, what was that all like?
It's like when you're about to go on stage for the very first time, like you've never done stand up before. You have no barometer of like what it's going to be like, obviously. So you don't know if what you're going to say is going to work. You have now I can think of a joke, I can think of a premise, and I can start writing it out, and I can pretty much 80% of the time predict where the laughs are going to come and whether or not I can write a joke and go, that's such an average joke, Pax. Like it's gonna not, like they're not gonna love it. And 80% of the time I'm right. Like the audience is like, oh, okay. Or I can write a joke and go, this is a crusher. And I'll walk on stage and I'll crush. Because I've been doing it for so long. I say 80% because there is some give and take of like not nailing it. And that's, that will always be the case. And that's why going on stage and trying your material in front of smaller crowds will always be necessary in stand-up. But when you first start, you have zero barometer. So when I walked on stage and did my first joke and people laughed, it was one of the most bizarre, like strange experiences because you have no barometer. You say this thing and people laugh, and it's the first time your brain registers that relationship between you and the audience forever. It's the only time and the first time your brain goes, oh, there's a connection between me and the audience. The thing that I say then gets this response that they do not have control over. Laughter is, you don't have control over laughter. Laughter is the natural response that comes when you, as a comedian, pop the tension. You create tension and then you pop the tension. And there's so many ways to do that, right? Comedians have all these different styles, but all comedy is you build tension in whatever way you want, whether it's a story, whether it's an observation like Seinfeld, whether it's shock comedy, like, you know, there's like Anthony Jeselnik is like he's a comedian that will say the thing that you never thought anyone would say, like that's his punchline. You're popping the tension in some way. And when I first experienced that, it was really bizarre. And then I got another laugh, and then I got another laugh, and I was like, wow, this is actually working. And it was a crazy experience. But here's the thing though. The audience at that gig were audience members for the Raw Comedy Quest, which means everyone else I was doing a gig with was also part of the Raw Comedy Quest. That means that everyone's there to support a friend. I also had some friends in the audience. Everyone had friends in the audience. The audience is 95% people there to support someone. So when you walk on stage, you're walking on stage to an audience that's paid $10 for this Raw gig, and they're super supportive and they're super pumped to be there, and they don't want anyone to do poorly, so you crush. Right? And all of these audiences in these Raw quests are like this. You get to the final. You do well. I didn't win. I didn't come runner up, but whatever. I got to the final, and I did well in the final in front of 400 people at the town hall. And then Scott, the owner of the comedy club, goes, "You're decent. Like there's something there. Like there's potential. Would you like to do normal gigs at the Classic?" And you go, "Yeah." And then you walk on stage in front of people who have paid $35 for a ticket, and they've paid $60 for the babysitter. And they don't care who you are. And they're not there to support you. They're there to have a good time. And if you're not good, they're going to be angry. And I walk on stage at my second gig and I bomb hard like nothing. Like dead silent. Not second gig. First gig after the Raw Comedy Quest. First real gig at the Classic. I bomb hard. It's so quiet that you can hear the lady in the front row go like this. You know that? You know when someone's like bored?
No,
you know when someone's bored? And they go, you can hear that. You can hear that.
How did you feel in that moment?
Oh man, it was gut-wrenching. My soul left my body. Like I contemplated quitting. Like in that moment, I was like, oh, I'm quitting. I'm not doing this again. I'm never doing this again. And the owner of the comedy club was like, that was really good. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I mean, they didn't laugh, but that's good. Like you're good. Like you stayed true to your material. You committed. You dug your heels in. And he found all these positives, and that like gave me a little spark. And I was like, oh, okay. He was like, yeah, don't worry. They didn't laugh, but I knew that they weren't going to laugh. Like you're new to this. No one's good when they first start. Chappelle wasn't good when he first started. No one was good. Chris Rock wasn't good nobody was good when they first started. No one. That's just how it is. And you'll figure it out. And so I, came back, and it's got better and got better. Figured out the relationship between you and the audience, figured out the rhythm. It takes like 8 to 12 years for a comedian to get good at stand-up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's perseverance, eh?
Yeah. You gotta be insane to do stand-up, because like you're not good at stand-up for the first 6, 7, 8 years. Yeah. Like you get to year 4 and you think you're good, and then you get to year 7 and then you watch videos of you in year 4 and you're like, what am I doing? But that's just the nature of it. Yeah.
So how do you pick yourself? I mean, other than the guy saying that, how do you?
You gotta in stand up and lots of endeavors similar to stand up. I would say probably you guys have had similar experiences. You just gotta have a really short memory. You just gotta be straight.
That's good.
Dory up in this, like up in this thing. You gotta be Dory, like you just gotta forget it. Done. But you know what's the really interesting part? I had a conversation with Ursula Carlson. I don't know if you guys know who she is. She is, if not one of the most successful stand-up comedians New Zealand has ever produced. Sometimes when we think of comedians, we just think of like Rhys Darby and like Flight of the Conchords and Tofinga and all of these comics that have gone to like LA and all these places and done big shows. And all of those comics that I've named are massive comics. But Ursula Carlson sold 30,000 tickets in Melbourne. Sold out show after sold out show after sold out show for a month. Like, Ursula Carlson is a crusher. So I just want to, I'm only saying that to give her props. Like, sometimes I feel like New Zealand doesn't give Ursula her props. She's an absolute beast. She gave me a piece of advice. I don't even know if she'll remember this, but she said to me, when you bomb and do poorly, and when you kill, the next morning, 9:30, 10 a.m., forget about it. Doesn't matter how good or how bad you did. So it's not, the thing I learned was don't have a short memory just for the bad gigs. Even for the good gigs.
Wow.
Forget about it.
That's cool, man.
Don't get caught up in it. Don't get attached to it. And it was one of the best pieces of advice I'd ever received. Yeah. I don't know, Ursula, if you see this, I don't know if you'll remember it, but yeah, it was incredible. Yeah. It changed the way I view comedy. It made me view comedy as a marathon, not a sprint.
How long ago were you given that advice?
Maybe like 2 years into my career.
Wow.
So 11 years ago.
It's cool.
Yeah. And she wasn't Ursula Carlson of now. She was still doing really well and was like on television in New Zealand a bit, you know, like she was definitely, the momentum was building, but that was something she had realized and passed on to me. But yeah, she wasn't the you know, like I think I may be wrong, but I'm pretty sure she's like she has a relatively big role in like a big Hollywood movie now. And
Wow,
like, yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's cool. I like that. You know why I like that? Because you said it before, early on. You don't want to rest on your laurels, eh? I think people get caught up in the wins,
Yeah.
on the success. Oh yeah, I did this, and you can dwell on that for ages.
Yeah.
And you forget to kind of move on. Hey, that was that, and then we need to move on.
I do want to get better at like taking a moment to celebrate my wins and just like celebrating it, be happy, and then learning to, after that celebration and giving yourself the pride and the pat on the back, then move on, you know, like, but I have a real bad habit of like not even giving myself that, like just doing what I need to do, whether it went good or bad, I move on. And I don't think that's the healthiest way to operate. But you know, you can't, it's habits die hard, and new habits are hard to learn.
What you say unhealthy? Because I can see the unhealthy part when you sit in that moment too long.
Yeah.
Hey, the happy moment when I did really well last night, and you make that last way too long, and that just gets in the way of you moving on. But in terms of you not giving yourself time to just enjoy that and not doing that for a long period of time, what are the what are the you said it's unhealthy. What's the outcome of that?
Burnout.
Oh, okay.
Just straight up burnout.
Keep going, eh? Keep going. You don't stop.
Because the thing is, my career path is like 80% mental. It's everything is up here. Coming up with jokes, creating full hour shows, writing scripts, coming up with TV show ideas, coming up with movie ideas, fleshing them out. It's all up here. And so when you don't stop and because like celebrating your wins is joyful. And I feel like joy is it's almost like taking your brain to a day spa. You know, like that joy, that feeling of like that peace, that feeling of being at ease for a moment and just going, man, you did that. You know, like taking a day to just, or like a couple of hours to just go, you did that. And like reflecting on it, being proud of it, thinking back to when you were like a 16-year-old, dreaming of doing this stuff and now you're doing it, you know, talking to your wife about it, how excited you are and exploring it with her and all of that stuff. It's like your brain gets to just like breathe for a bit, you know? And when I don't do that, I almost always hit a wall. And that wall lasts longer than that moment that I could have taken to just be at ease for a bit. That wall lasts like 2-3 days of like, I'm burnt out now. Like I cannot think. I've just gone months and months and months and months of just like grinding and like writing and coming up with ideas and this and that and this. And now I'm burnt out. Now I've got to take like 3 days off because my brain just cannot go anymore. it's ironic. Like if I just let myself take those small moments, I probably wouldn't have experienced the burnout as badly as I do, you know. And I haven't nailed it yet. Like I still get caught in that pattern, but yeah, it's something I'm trying to relearn and not do so often.
So when you burn out, you said you burn out, and obviously the mental, obviously in terms of the industry and comedy. So when you burn out, so what happens to you? Maybe you can share with us, Pax, so people can get a bit of an idea.
Yeah, it's interesting. What happens to me? I get irritable. I don't sleep very well. I get my body physically responds as well. Like I get like a little bit queasy and like I don't respond physically very well. And then the obvious one is that like my cognitive ability to problem solve, which is what like 90% of writing is problem solving, because you're exploring a story and you're trying to understand how that story unfolds. So you're just doing a series of creative problem solving, right? And that task becomes like almost impossible. So it's like, it's real. And I think a lot of us probably experience it and maybe are not willing to admit it and are a bit scared to admit it, that like we experience burnout. And it's not just creative industries, like lawyers and doctors and teachers and builders, and we all experience it because unfortunately, we live in an overly capitalistic society that, and you know, with social media now, this gross hustle culture on social media, where like men are talking about how, you know, like only real men grind 24/7 and make millions of dollars, and if you don't make millions of dollars and grind 24/7, then are you a man? Like there's a lot of that rhetoric on social media now with like people like Andrew Tate and like all of that stuff, and young boys are watching it, and yeah, that culture is not helping. But yeah, I think when I do give myself time to just, you know, it's essentially just giving yourself small breaks and treating your wins as opportunities to give yourself small breaks, I think is just a healthy way to operate. It's just, you know, like you've done this thing, you worked really hard to achieve it. It was a success, relative success, you know, whatever. There's probably challenges, but you achieved something. That's a great opportunity. Just like birthdays are an opportunity for family and friends to get together. No one really cares about the fact that you were, you know, like, actually it's gross that you were born on that day. Birth is kind of gross. It's beautiful. It's beautiful and it's a miracle of life and all of that stuff, but also it's slimy and gross. All right, I've had 2 kids. Like no one says like, oh, like no one. We don't want to see pictures of you being born. Like no one actually cares about the birthday. It's just an opportunity, right, to celebrate. Friends, family come together. We eat cake. We laugh. We joke. We sing a song. You know. In the same way, you can treat your wins as that. Mm-hmm. It's an opportunity to do something, which is give your mind an opportunity to rest and to be happy and joyful, you know, to bask in that joyful spirit. And then after a adequate period of time, whether it's a couple of hours, whether it's an entire day, whatever, you move on and you keep going and you'll be happier for it. Yeah. I say all this stuff and I don't do it. You know what I mean? I don't do it. Like I say all this, I'm saying it with longing. Like I want to do it, you know?
Yeah.
Are there specific things that you'd like to do when you're in that sort of burnout phase that help get you back and ready to be connected again?
Yeah, I need to just do something I enjoy. And not think about the things that I am required to do. Like golf is great for that. It's very peaceful and process oriented and slow. It's not like quick go. It's very and it's very frustrating and you just have to learn to be okay with it and just breathe through it and just move on. You know, like it's really great. Shooting hoops, like I'm a big basketball head and I've played basketball my whole life. Just going out to the court and shooting hoops. Something for me, for everyone, it'll be different. I've started to, you know, as a Baha'i, prayer and meditation is really important and like a daily practice in our faith. And so I've learned to really lean on that more and not see it as a task that I have to do. You know, when I was younger, even a couple of years ago, I would see it as like, I'm a Baha'i, we pray every day, so this is a thing I have to do. Ugh, you know? But now learning to see it as an opportunity and leaning into it, you know, the prayer and the meditation, and like really using it as a space to like center oneself, calm oneself. Yeah. There's things, it'll be different for everyone, but yeah.
Because with the amount of work that you have to engage in, you don't sound like you're an 8-hour guy. 8-hour day guy. Like, what is your...
Oh, it's all over the place. As a creative, it's really hard. It's like 5 a.m. till like 9 a.m. Then I'll like lose my train of thought. Then I'll like make breakfast for the kids and make them their school lunches. Then they'll go to school. Then I'll just like walk around for an hour, not really doing anything. For creatives, it's really like some comics are really good at just like sitting down for 2 hours and then they'll write like 18 jokes and like 7 of them will be good and the rest will be bad, and then the next day they'll just repeat that process. Some comics can do that.
Wow.
I can't. I need to just like meander and let my brain like rattle around and like play PlayStation for a bit and then like go watch some dunk highlights, and then suddenly a thought will come and I'll like close the highlight video, run to my office and like start writing.
That's cool.
And then and it'll all come out, and then I'll hit a wall again and I'll be like, again, problem solving. I can't solve the problem, so I'll go meander again. It's cool, and it makes me seem real avant-garde and like real like, you know, the weird creative. It makes me seem cool like that. But with a family and a wife, my wife would really love it if I just had a 9 to 5, you know, like she knows when I've finished. Sometimes at like 10, we'll be watching a movie and at 10 o'clock I'll be like, and I'll have to like write something because I've just thought of something, you know, like, so it can be frustrating, but yeah, sometimes you just can't fight. If that's how you create and that's how you can't fight it. Like you just have to work around it. You just have to figure out ways to work around it. And
that's cool. And I think men need to hear that. Like men and women need to hear that our working styles are all different.
Yeah.
But I love that the theme of your korero tonight is, on one hand, like we've got to prioritize our kids, and there's not a structured way to do that. It's just when you can, you do it. And then the other thing is
doing it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, being absolutely present in that moment, regardless of what part of the day it is, because we're not always going to be at dinner. We're not always going to be at breakfast or whatever, but whatever it is, you're present. And then I love the korero around celebrating those moments, whether you're doing it or not. But I just love how you're explaining what it does for you. It gives you a moment of recovery, a moment of reflection, a moment to kind of restore all that energy you've poured into that, to kind of reset yourself, to then go, cool, done that, close that chapter, move on to the next project. That's so healthy. And so I think for people who are listening to this, you know, we're too busy trying to plan our day on Sunday, and then on Monday you don't do anything that you planned because that's not my working style, for example. And then you just feel like you failed because you've learned somebody else's technique that isn't yours. And what you're highlighting is, no, this is how you are. Things work off the those moments, and then it's being able to capture that, but you know, also just being present in different parts of the day with your family. And I just think it's cool. I think it's really useful, really, really useful for people to hear that.
Hard help, man.
Really useful for me to hear that too.
Yeah. And I mean, I've mentioned this multiple times throughout our conversation, that just because I'm saying it doesn't mean like I'm nailing it, and that's okay. And if you have concepts that you understand but you're not nailing it, that's okay. You know, like it's understanding it is the first step, and then piece by piece we put the puzzle together, and that's all right.
That's so cool. I like it. You said there are times where you don't nail it, but the thing is, the coolest thing what I'm gauging from you, Pax, is that you don't bat your eye. You're not looking back. You're not turning back. You know, you don't turn around. Oh, okay, maybe I should get a 9 to 5. I just see you're quite persistent, you're consistent, and you back yourself. And I like that. But has there ever been Like you said, oh, okay, maybe I should get a 9 to 5. Has there ever been instances or a moment where you felt like maybe I should?
I quit comedy for 1 year in 2014. I quit comedy.
Why?
Because my kids wanted to go to what's it called? What's that place near the airport that has like a crocodile?
Butterfly Creek.
Butterfly Creek. Yeah. My kids wanted to go to Butterfly Creek and I couldn't afford it. And I had 2 kids. No. Oh yeah. I had 2 kids, but my second was a baby. Like really, really new, fresh out the oven. Like still warm. And sorry. I'm so sorry. That's so gross.
That's what you do to celebrate birthdays.
Yeah, I don't know why I said
warm
that.
Is good.
Warm is good. Warm is good. Warm is good. Cold. We don't want them to get cold, you know?
No.
My kid wanted to go to Butterfly Creek, and I was making like, with 2 children and a wife, and living in Auckland, I was making like $32,000 a year, and my wife wasn't working because she was like, she's a lawyer, but she was like, I want to be here with the kids, so like you got to figure it out. And I was like, okay. And I was making nothing. You know, I was doing so many gigs, but like there's a bunch of gigs that are like unpaid because you're trying to figure it out. There's a bunch of gigs that pay you in like petrol vouchers, and like 2 of them are expired. You know, like they give you 4, and like 2 of them like last month. You know,
oh man.
And like so it's hard out here. And my kid was like, I want to go to Butterfly Creek, and I couldn't afford it. And I just had a moment where I was like, am I being selfish? Am I committing to this vision but not thinking about the people around me? And so I quit in 2014, and I went and studied education. I went to become a teacher because I was like, man, that's one thing that I feel like my communication skills could transfer over to easily. You know, like teaching, and you know, I could still be the funny teacher, I guess. You know, and then by the end of that year, and I was doing quite well. I was getting good grades, and I was actually like enjoying myself. But at the end of the year, my wife was like, "You're sad, aren't you?" And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, you need to go back to comedy.
Wow.
And I went back to comedy after a year, and I was the best comedian I had ever been. After a year of never doing comedy, I went back to comedy, and I was killing gigs like I had never killed before. I don't know what happened. Maybe a break just rejuvenates you. Maybe taking a year to like study academically advances your brain and allows your brain to understand jokes in a different way. I don't know what it was. Maybe just being 1 year older. I just came back and just understood comedy on a new level, and my career. And then that year I came back in 2015. 2016, I did the New Zealand Comedy Gala for the first time, and I don't know if you guys have seen this bit, but I did a bit about pretending to be Tongan to survive at school. Yeah. And that exploded. Like it exploded in a way that I had never experienced before, and still haven't. I still haven't reached the heights of that virality again. It was like millions and millions and millions of views. Like it was crazy. For years, I was just like the Tongan guy, like the hey Tongan, like, malo, you know, like I had to learn Tongan so that what
was the inspiration of that piece?
It was real.
Yeah.
In primary and intermediate, I literally pretended to be Tongan so that people wouldn't make fun of me for 9/11. Because Iran is Middle East, right? Iran is like scary, beards, Middle East. Pakistan was more like Apu from The Simpsons. So Pakistan was softer, and then Iran was like the bit that I needed to get rid of. So I removed Iran and said I'm half Pakistani, half Tongan. Just for like 4 years, 3 years.
So you can still be Pakistan?
Yeah, so people believe me. I had to learn Tongan, like, so that people would believe me.
Share some of it.
I remember that.
Tongan.
I remember that.
I had to learn it, man. I learned bad words as well, but
Always the bad words.
I learned bad words. But yeah, I had to learn Tongan and like the whole thing. So I did that bit. It exploded, and then my career changed. Yeah, from there. Yeah, everything changed. Yeah.
But it was so cool. Props to your wife, man. Yeah. Props to your wife. Yeah, she could have said, no, just carry on teaching. Yeah. But she knew her, man. She knew what was going on with her husband. Like, she said, hey,
she knew. She knew I needed to do it to be, not just to be happy, but like to have that sense of joy You know, because it's one thing to be a teacher, but it's another thing to be a teacher that like really wants to be a teacher. Then you're a teacher on another level. I was happy to be a teacher, but it's not what I really wanted to do. I really believe I would have tried really hard, and I really believe that I would have committed myself, but it's not what I really wanted to do. And my wife knew that. She knew that there was something else that I really wanted to do, and so yeah, I'm really thankful to my wife.
It's cool,
She's
man.
awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome to have that kind of support, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's critical, especially in a career like that. But now she's back to working in law and, you know, raking it in. Putting away the bad guys.
Well, actually, because she's Canadian, right?
She's Canadian, yeah. Yeah, but born in Canada, but raised in Vanuatu.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow,
so
cool.
she's like more islander than she is. She's full Persian ethnically,
Wow.
but born in Canada, and then left Canada when she was 8 and was raised in Melanesia in Vanuatu.
So is
Yeah. And speaks French because it's a French colony.
French colony.
were you persistent like your dad?
I was wondering the same thing. If there are parallels with like the way you met your wife and
You know, the parallels were that my dad was really young when he went after my mum, and she was like 4 years older than him. And so that's a parallel. I was 20. I was 20 and my wife was 26 when I asked her if she wanted to like get to know one another and hang out more and like essentially ask if you want to date. I was like 20 and she was 26. But I mean, I wasn't that persistent because we hung out for like a month.
Is this your vision?
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. If you ask her, maybe it's completely different. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. But I am very lucky. I'm very lucky. And you know, marriages. I mean, everyone who's married knows that marriage is hard, but it's also awesome. It's both.
Yeah.
It's hard work, and it can take you to the edge of sanity, and it can also be the best thing ever. Yeah,
That's cool.
yeah.
That's so cool.
You've gone from being 17, 18, kind of being inspired.
Yeah.
Then you do your first gig and this starts to climb. Now you're on another level. So you go from doing stand-up comedy, you do these big comedy festivals. Now you're in front of TV. Tell us that transition, because that's huge.
Yeah. Thankfully for me, it was really gradual. And I really believe that that's a really important way to advance in your career, like especially in the entertainment industry. I think it's necessary for all careers, but particularly in the entertainment industry, I think advancing organically is really important because when the opportunities arise, you're actually ready for the opportunities because you've been advancing and sharpening your tools gradually, and then you get to the point and you know what to do. There's lots of, especially the social media age has created these like overnight sensations who are like famous in like 4 days. They get, they go viral a few times and then they replicate it, and then they've got like all of a sudden like 80,000 followers or 100,000 followers. And I know a bunch of them that, they're comedic in their content, and so they go on television shows, comedy television shows, and they just get eaten alive by the comedians that have like 6,000 followers, but they've been doing stand-up for like 18 years. This is what they do. They are assassins. And you step in the ring with them and and I know a bunch of social media people that just couldn't do it. And so they just stick to social media. And that's great. Like, that's cool. Like, that's not inherently bad. It just, in the realm of television, I'm just grateful that I didn't come up in the social media age. Social media came later. And so I was forced to just naturally, organically sharpen my tools. And then when the opportunity came knocking, my first gig I did a stand-up show on Māori television. It was called
Crack Up, was it?
Crack Up. Wow, I don't even know it. It was called Crack Up, and it was Mike King. That was Mike King's last gig, and he was hosting it, and I got to do that show. I mean, I'm not Māori, but they were like close enough,
He's songing.
He's talking. And that was the first gig that I did on television, and I had really like worked on my stand up. And so then when the gala came around in 2016, I was really ready. Like, I was ready to go. And then after that, it took a couple of years after that to then get 7 Days, And then a couple of years after that, I got another thing. And so gradually, so by the time I got to the point where I'm hosting the Great Kiwi Bake Off or hosting Endangered Species Aotearoa, you know, there are no nerves. There are no there is no trepidation. You know, I've been in front of the camera. Yeah, I haven't been the host of things, but I've been there and I've been around it and I've been sharpening my tools, and now I get the opportunity to be the host. It's not scary, and I know what to do, and I do a job that I'm proud of, and people tell me that I'm nailing it, and that's not to toot my own horn. That's just to highlight the value of being patient and not feeling like you need it all now, because sometimes wanting it all now will lead to a train wreck. Sometimes it won't, but most of the time it will. But if you are patient and you grind and you sharpen your tools, when you get there, you know what to do with it, you know? And so I'm really fortunate that that's how my career unfolded. And then I got raised by refugees, and that was a little bit different. I was like really unprepared for that because I'd never written full-length scripts before. I'd only written sketches, which are shorter comedy scripts, and then stand-up. So that was a real challenge. But, you know, thankfully I had the right people around me to support and guide me, and I wasn't left alone to just write those scripts. And then the second season, same thing, you know, like the first season sharpened my tools, and then the second season I really felt like I knew what I was doing. And so creatively and story-wise, I really branched out. And for people that watch both seasons, like a lot of people can really see that. Like the second season is a lot story-wise, and in terms of being a storyteller, it's a lot riskier and a lot deeper and a lot more. It's as funny, but it's also more. It's a lot more painful, and it's because as a storyteller, I felt confident to do that. So there was no one big moment on television that. I mean, the gala where I pretended to be Tongan was kind of that, but there wasn't like a big thing where it was like Pax Assadi is now the host of this massive show out of nowhere, and you know, like there wasn't that. It was like you get the gala, it's 4 minutes of stand up, then you get this little spot on 7 days, then you get this little spot, you do this little thing, and then eventually you work your way up. And
because what does organic mean? Because you say organic, I hear organic. On one hand, you're just every opportunity that comes, you do it because it's an opportunity to refine, build your experience bank. And then, what is the organic bit? Just so that people understand.
Yeah, I think what I mean by that is that you're process oriented rather than results oriented. So you're not, because if you are results oriented, you will do whatever it takes to gain the results, which in this day and age is amount of people that follow you, or the amount of money in your bank account, or how many ratings, or how big is your television show, you know, in terms of like how many people watch it. And those results are great, and those results are important, and we shouldn't just forget about them. But it's about what is your orientation, like what are you focusing on? And when you're process oriented, and rather just committed to the actual craft itself rather than the results that come from it, the results will come, but you don't know how quickly they will come, right? You just have to trust the process. You just have to commit to the craft. And for some people who commit to the craft, the results come in 3 years, and that's okay. That's the process that happened to you. And for some people like me, the real results come 9 years down the line. And I just learned to be okay with that. This is my process. I'm not getting any massive things that are changing my life, but that's okay. I'm getting all of these great opportunities. You grind away, you commit to the process. You learn to love the process of sharpening your tools and getting good at your craft, and just trust that it will come. You stay committed, and it will come. It might come a little bit later, or it might come in 2 years. Yeah, you're not in control of that. I think that's what I mean by organic, rather than trying to force it to happen now. You know? Yeah. Because you might make it happen now, and you magically make it happen now. But are you ready for now? Now comes. What do you do with it? Do you fumble it? you know, and some people don't, but there's a lot of people that do. And I've witnessed that firsthand. I've seen social media people who explode overnight and then they walk on TV thinking that they've got it in the bag and they fumble it. And I honestly take zero joy in that. Like I wish all of these, all creatives the best. And the only thing I think really is like, man, I wish you just took a little bit more time. Just a little bit more time to know who you are. Who are you? What is your voice? What is your comedic voice? What is your perspective? That's what you're missing, you know? And that comes with time. With time, you understand who you are. What is your voice? What space do you hold? And everything changes, you know?
That's good advice, man. That's good advice. And I totally believe what you're saying because I know another stand-up comedian. He's been in the game for ages. I'm not too sure if you know Vela Manusote.
From Wellington?
No, he's Auckland. But he's old school comedian. Yeah, but he hasn't done stand up for a while now. Yeah. But he said the same thing. He said, "Hey," I said to him, "Hey," I asked him, "Hey, what do you think about the social media guys and the guys who are doing these funny clips?" And he's like, "Oh, that's all good. I think there's a place for that. Those guys are awesome." Yeah. But he said, "I can guarantee you, if you put them on a stage right now, real time, and they try to crack jokes, it's going to be very different. It's a different ball game.
Oh, they tank. Yeah, and it's not their fault. It's just the nature of the game, yeah.
It's true. And I like what you said, in terms of the results, people get so hung up and so focused on the results that, like you said, they try to force those results. And sometimes when you're so focused on those results, you don't enjoy the process because you're wanting to see the end product instead of like, okay, the refinements, the craft, the hardships, the struggles, and also the joy of seeing the progression. And so it's important. I like that. I like that you're open and honest about that because some people just want to get to the goal, the ultimate goal, whatever it is, straight away. And when the opportunity comes or something comes, they're not ready. And so for you, it sounds like you were ready when those opportunities came.
Yeah, I was ready. And you, like an example of how it happens organically is the way I got Bake Off, the way I ended up hosting Bake Off was that I was just working on my stand-up and there just so happened to be a producer from Warner Brothers in the audience. You know, like that interconnectedness of it all. Like I've worked on my stand-up so much that when I walk on stage, I have complete command of who I am on stage because I've committed to that process. And they see that as a producer of a television show, you see that and you go, oh, maybe this kid would be good as the host. And so I got an audition and it all, you know, like there is an interconnectedness. When you commit to being good at a craft, things start to piece together. And again, it might not happen overnight. It might take a while, but it happens.
He's probably seen you a few times before that, maybe. And
potentially.
Was able to experience you live.
Yeah.
And I also hear, like, I think when we talk about sharpening our skill and our craft, I don't think people realize how many formats you've had to create of that skill.
Yes.
And the I guess the adaptability of your skill in different audiences and different platforms, and that in itself is the process, That in itself is a massive process. And so I think I'm just absolutely inspired, but also just astounded by just your stamina for it. It requires a massive stamina for somebody to pursue this whole journey and to get to the place that you're